Vince, thank you so much for coming on. I wanted to say I found your music first on TikTok. I don't know if anybody's ever told you that yet. So congratulations. Your
No.
TikTok is working out for you.
Awesome. I love to hear that because I've been on there for, for what feels like forever now. And it's like, that's all anybody tells you. It has to be on TikTok and you have to be popping off on TikTok. So I'm glad to see some people are finally finding me on there. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, it links to everything else. Like it links to your
Yeah.
Spotify, your Instagram, your website, things like that. There's something that we
Hmm.
just kind of touched upon to you getting clout. So, it's important to get
Right.
those links in there.
Got to make yourself accessible.
Yeah, what's
That's like
something
key.
I'm curious, what's something you've kind of been doing to kind of get your like fan base going or get more exposure? Because like I mentioned, you have a couple channels and you actually have a YouTube too that I saw. So where do you see
Mhm.
yourself devoting like a lot of your energy?
Um, I'd say it's pretty across the board. Like I try to like kind of keep as much like I hate this word, but I guess content. Like I try to
Yeah.
just keep pushing as much stuff out through those channels as possible. As far as YouTube goes, I don't think I've done a video for yeah, I think the last video I did was like January 2021. So it's been a minute on the videos.
Yeah.
But I've kind of been intentionally scaling back with those a little bit because they are fairly costly. Um, and at this point in my career right now, I really want to focus on just making really, really great music and music that resonates and that sounds good and that's really well produced. And then, kind of dip back into the videos because I was doing a lot of videos there for a minute and it wasn't necessarily reaching the audience I wanted it to. So I was like, you know what, let me just get back to square one and just put the music first. And then if the music's good enough, it'll go on its own. And then we'll revisit the whole video thing. So
Yeah, totally. And I'm curious too, because I was reading your bio before we got on, and it said that you are anticipating putting out a lot more music in 2022. And I saw you put out a single not that long ago. I think it was 332, was it?
yep, that was in January.
Yep. And then you got something else coming out soon. By the time this probably is released, it'll be after the fact. So do you want to talk a little
Mhm.
bit about your new single that's out?
Yeah, so are you talking about 332 or the one that's coming out?
We'll talk about both of them because they're both good.
Okay. Yeah, well, 332 was a song. A lot of the stuff I released, it's on like I guess like a delayed schedule. Like nothing I write about, with the exception of a few songs, is really like about what I'm presently going through or stuff that I'm presently experiencing. It always takes a minute to kind of sit on it, digest the experience, write about the experience, record
Mm,
it, produce it, yada yada. But 332 was a ballad I wrote over a year ago at this point. My producer just sent me like and how a lot of my songs start is kind of just like a stripped down chord progression with either guitar or piano, and it's just a couple chords and it's a vibe, and there's really nothing else. And he sent me this chord progression out of the blue one day when I was at work, and he's like, "Hey, I just wrote this, little piano ballad. What do you think? Can you write something to it?" And something about it just kind of resonated with me a lot.
yeah.
And I kind of started drawing upon this experience I had. It was a breakup from probably like 4 or 5 years ago at this point. And I was like, I haven't done a ballad in a minute. I haven't done a really sad song in a minute. And if you listen to a lot of my catalog, I don't do a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
let me just take a shot. So I think I wrote the whole song in like 30 minutes on like a lunch break. It was like one of those times when it really just came out.
Yeah.
And I recorded a little demo and sent it back to him. I was like, what do you think? And this is when I was still in New York.
Right.
And I sent it to my guy, Benny, out here. And he's like, oh my God, I love this. He's like, we got to finish this. And I was like, all right, if you say so. So I had a few other things ready to go for last summer that were more upbeat and that fit the season more. So I
Yeah.
put it on the back burner for a bit. And then I finally went in and recorded it like last fall, and then we mixed it here when I finally got to LA.
Yeah.
And it definitely became one of my favorites very quickly of
Hmm.
mine. And usually I gravitate towards more upbeat stuff in general, but I just think it all fell together in such a nice way. And it was
Yeah.
kind of like our idea from the start to kind of drop it out for the first half and make it just a true ballad with some, we kind of gave it like a updated sound with those synths and then brought in the drums on the second half and made it kind of like this retro 80s like Phil Collins type thing, which I really
Yeah.
loved. And yeah, it's that classic like pop power ballad that you're not hearing too much of these days. So we're really happy with how that one turned out, and I'm glad it's like resonating with so many people right now on
Yeah.
Spotify.
Yeah. And do you think like you kind of mentioned not hearing a lot of that type of stuff like on the radio or in the pop spectrum right now? Is that a reason why you kind of wanted to make it that turn and to turn to more, I guess, like deeper, like vulnerable stuff? Because like you said, your catalog is pretty like upbeat, like very like pop wavy, like that kind of vibe. So is that like what you're thinking of going towards because you're not seeing a lot of that right now?
Um, that's always a tough question because like I'm not as like I guess hip as I used to be when it comes to like what's trendy on the radio, but I'm in tune with it and I hear what's going on. And I never like when I'm going into write or I'm picking like instrumentals or I'm writing, on my guitar, like I'm never trying to reference something that's going on right now, or I'm trying to be like, oh, we should make it sound like that Post Malone song or Kid Leroy or whoever. Like I appreciate what everybody's doing, but I think the most effective thing you can do is kind of just carve out your own lane
Yeah.
and make the stuff you want to make and create the sound you want to have. So, yeah, to answer your question, I don't really pay attention that much to what's going on, and I kind of just make stuff. And when it feels right, it feels right. I put it out. So,
That's well said. Sometimes you got to block out all the noise just to make your own.
yeah, and you know what? I think there's one thing to be said about like jumping on trends and like, you know, following, I guess, what's going on. And that's certainly one way to get a hit and get some notoriety. But I think a lot of times those artists they come and go and burn out really quick. So I think the best way for me to stand out, and some of my favorite artists have stood out by doing things that are different. So
Yeah.
I kind of want to just like do something that's not really happening right now and hope it catches some people's ears.
Yeah, totally. What about your other song, 23?
So 23 was actually one that I wrote fairly recently. When I got out here, I started working with this producer at Universal. His name's Teddy. He's super dope, super talented. And as soon as we met, we kind of just clicked. We were very much on the same page when it comes to like style and production and what the kind of things we want to bring back in pop and the kind of like where we want to take the genre. And he kind of, he's more than just somebody I'm working with. He kind of wants to rise up and come up with me, which is what I wanted to hear, to be honest with you. So we got in the studio back in like November, and we've just been writing. And we've probably written like 12 or 13 songs, and we're going to pick the best 6 of them to start putting out. And we've got a few that are more dancey. There's like some disco feels in there. There's some more straight down the middle pop stuff. There's more of like a darker rock tune in there. And we thought we had the first single picked out, which would have been the one that I'm putting out on this Friday. Yeah. But then I kind of just found myself in a weird place where I was kind of questioning my relationship with someone and questioning, should I stay, should I go type thing. And the feeling, the overarching feeling of what it was that it didn't feel like it used to, And I was like, that's kind of an interesting sentiment that I haven't heard necessarily in a song. I don't know if I haven't heard it. It might have been done before, but I couldn't think of an example. And I just kept hearing this line in my head that was like, I wish I could love you like I did at 23. And that's kind of the whole punchline, tagline of the song. And that's what the whole thing structures around. So it starts off as this kind of like, again, similar to 332. It's like this melancholy, just stripped out ballady feel with just a guitar, but it's a little more upbeat. And then it eventually kind of builds and builds and builds and kind of explodes into this huge pop rock moment that I just love, because I love rock music and I love pop. So I kind of combine the two. And it's just this, it's not a happy song by any means. It's very, very sad lyrically, but it explodes in a way that's still really fun, and you can still crank it and, feel good blasting it in your car. So again, it's definitely it's definitely a more vulnerable me than you would see typically on a lot of my records, but I'm excited to put it out because I do think it's one of my better songs that I've done in a while. So that's coming out this Friday, the 18th.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congrats, man. That's a big deal for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, what are some of your, or who are some of your like greatest inspirations, would you say? Because you mentioned pop, you mentioned rock, you mentioned like artists that kind of carve out their own lane. That could be anyone. So I got to
Mhm.
hear some names.
Yeah, I guess like classical influences would be like, you know, I grew up in a very musical household.
Mm,
My dad was in a band since the time I was born, so I grew up around a lot of like just, he, you know, he sang, he played piano, he played guitar, and it was just a constant thing. So I really was influenced from like a young age, like 3, 4, 5, with like, you know, like old Stevie Wonder, Paul McCartney, Elton John, Prince, stuff like that. And then around like the turn of the century, like 2000s, I started really like lashing on to like a lot of that mainstream pop stuff, like Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, Black Eyed Peas, like stuff like that. And I kind of like, I think it dawned on me eventually, maybe when I was like 13 or 14, when I like, you know, figured out how to like look stuff up and Google things. And it became apparent to me that there was kind of one guy at the center of all of these hits and all these artists that were really great, by the name of Max Martin. And I don't
mm,
know if you know who Max is, but he's a
yeah.
super famous producer, writer. He's pretty much like curated the radio for the last 20 years, like
Yeah.
behind the scenes, because he's not an artist, but he writes and he produces all the songs that
Right.
we all know and love. And I just became super obsessed with his style, with his writing, with his influence, with his like approach to writing melodies and lyrics and structure.
Mm,
Because he's so methodical and mathematical with it, but in a way that always feels fresh and cool. And he's managed to stay relevant since like the late 90s up until, you know, he's got hits on the radio, in present day. So,
yeah.
and he's touched every major artist from like, you know, like the Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, to like The Weeknd, Bruno Mars, Katy Perry, Maroon 5. Like he's done all those mega hits. So as far as like the biggest modern influences, I'd say he's probably at the top for me. I think he's
Yeah.
just incredibly talented, and
Mm,
he's like a once in a lifetime kind of dude. So I look up to him a lot.
yeah. That's really cool. And you sound like you're trying to do everything he's doing, like you said, between the writing and the producing. So you kind of have your hand in everything, I assume, right?
Yeah, I write all my music. I write all the melodies, the lyrics. I do a lot of like the structure, chord progression, stuff like that. I won't sit here and say I produce all of it because I definitely don't. I
Yeah.
work with a lot of talented dudes, who I'm very fortunate to work with, because you know music is a collaborative. It's a collaborative thing, and I think the more people you have on it, just the better it's going to turn out. Really, so. Um, I'm fortunate to work with a lot of people who kind of share the same vision, who can kind of like keep me in check and raise me up, and take the good ideas when they come, and then, you know, respect enough to say, you know what, maybe that's a bad idea. Let's not do that. And I think that's also just as important. So, but yeah, I'm definitely not just producing all this stuff like single handedly. I've got a lot of people like helping me out in my corner.
Right. Yeah. What was that transition like? Because you mentioned you're from New York, and I think you're from like upstate New York or somewhere around there. And so you
Mhm.
moved to LA, I assume, for music. What was that transition like?
Um, I mean, it was definitely, I won't say it was tough because I've always been someone who's like welcome change and who's really, you know, I've never felt scared or intimidated. I definitely get excited by it. And I
Mm,
was definitely feeling kind of stale in New York. I was working the same job for 4 years.
yeah.
Um, I had a lot of great friends. I had a good recording situation set up there where you know, I had a really good relationship with the studio manager, and me and him, you know, he was vocal producing all the songs for me too. So we had a good thing going, and I had a band and everything. But I think COVID kind of just made everything feel stale and stalled out. And a lot of the producers who were mixing my songs were out here in LA, and they're like, dude, you gotta come out here. Like, this is where the opportunity is. This is where it's
Yeah.
happening. Um, and you know, I was putting out music since early 2019. So I was doing it for a while from New York, and my career just wasn't really taking off the way I wanted it to. So I was kind of just like, you know what, I'm not getting any younger, and it's kind of a now or never moment for me. So I was just, it was fairly easy. I was kind of just like, you know what, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So
Yeah.
I just got up and did it. And it's been, there's been challenges, but there's, for all the shady things that go on in LA, there's a lot of good people here too. There's a lot of really genuine people you just got to find. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's good to hear. That's awesome. Would you say I was looking back at your stuff too from like 2019, watched a couple of your videos, like listened to some of those early songs. I could sense like there's a bit of progression there. Like I can tell you've made like you were just saying, like that kind of change or that liftoff you needed. So where do you kind of see yourself going now that you've made the move, you've been there for some time, you got stuff coming out, like where do you really want to like go?
Hopefully to a major label deal pretty soon here. But yeah, I mean, I think what you said there is important, is that like, I don't feel like I've been going backwards, which is good. I feel like I've only been going up. And yeah, my earlier stuff, like it definitely wasn't the most polished. It definitely, I look back on it now and I'm like, oh my God, like I would never like put something out like that, but I think
Yeah.
there's a reason I don't take it down. It's because of like exactly what you just said. Like you can see the progression and you can see the work, and you can see that like, other people maybe who are just starting out can kind of see that like, you don't have to have it all together right in the beginning. You could kind of take your time with it. You could hone in your craft. You could hone in your writing, your singing. And, a lot of the earlier stuff, like the production's really poor. It's not mixed very well, but there was always that one song that got me enough attention to get a better producer and to start working with better people and get more people involved. And that's truly how it's happened every single time. Is like, somebody will reach out to me after hearing something and they'll be like, hey, this was cool. Like, can I help you take it further? So that's kind of that's what I hope keeps happening, is that we just keep leveling up until we're where we want to be.
And then at that point, you probably would do more music videos, I would think, because that was kind of how we opened up, was like, put that on hold for now.
And like I said, like I loved, and the thing with the videos was I had a good thing going in New York too, with this dude Cameron, who he's super talented, and he's got his own his film company and everything. But I got hooked up with him through an old management deal I had in New York, and he was fresh out of film school at the time, so he was kind of just looking to build up his portfolio. So he, we kind of like found each other at a time where I was like, all right, I've never done a video before. You really don't have much under your belt. Like, let's kind of just help each other out here. So he wasn't like charging me as much as one normally would to do videos. And because of that, we cranked out like, I did like 8 videos with him in just over a year or something like that. Like we did a lot of different things. And we did a few acoustic videos, like some more remix videos that were a little bit more tongue in cheek. We did some serious stuff that was a little more sexy and like mature. We did like a Halloween themed video. And it was great working with him, because the videos really like, I wrote most of the treatments for those, and it really gave me an opportunity to like creatively and visually give those songs a different kind of narrative that you might not get just from listening to it,
Yeah,
and
totally.
everything I threw at him, he was like, yeah, let's just figure it out. Let's do it. Like, we don't have a huge budget. Like, I don't know which ones you watched, but for the most recent one, Criminal, I like, I recorded the song, and then I was like, I really want to debut this with a video. And I was like, the song is very straightforward. It's just a very like, kind of on the nose, like sex song that like The Weeknd or like Nick Jonas would put out. And I was like, what if we took like the title Criminal and gave it this like 1920s, like flapper prohibition era twist with like a Great Gatsby aesthetic meets like 50 Shades of Grey aesthetic. And I was like, do you think we can pull it off? Like, can we make it look like the 20s? He's like, yeah, I got you. Let's do it. So yeah, that one was like a day and a half shoot, and we're really excited how that one turned out. So yeah, it's a great time. Honestly, I have a lot of fun doing them, but COVID got crazy. It just got too much, and I didn't want to. I wanted to divert my attention elsewhere. So, but hoping to pick that back up soon.
Well, it showed because that was
music.
the video I watched, and I said to myself, "Damn, this guy looks like he could really get into acting over here."
Oh my gosh. Not even. Thank you though. But that was one thing I was always like, oh God, I could sing, but I definitely can't act. So I don't know how this is gonna turn out, but
Right, right.
I'm glad I fooled you. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Well, you mentioned something too about like COVID and with things kind of picking up now. I saw too, you actually have a few shows, maybe one or two coming up in the future. Is that like new for you in the sense like you're getting back at live shows?
Um, yes and no. Like, obviously during like the peak of COVID, I didn't really do much. Like I did a few like live stream shows, but those were always, kind of lame to me. And then I started getting back into it last March when COVID was slightly letting up. Like me and my friend Rob did a few acoustic shows in New York. We were kind of just getting back out there in a small way. And then I got the band back together briefly right before I came out here, and we snuck like three full band shows in before I came out. And then since then, yeah, I've kind of just been like in the studio a lot. So I haven't played a ton out here. The one I did do back in January was at the Viper Room, which was really cool. So that's like a venue that I've heard a lot about, and that was like my first show in LA. So I did the Viper Room in January, and then I've got Madame Siam in Hollywood. That's coming up in 3 weeks. Yeah, 3 weeks, I think. So
That's awesome. It must feel good to be out like on stage and to interact. Do you ever like, because you are just kind of starting out, especially in the LA scene, but are you like getting like a good reception? Like, are people coming up to you and saying they've heard your music before?
not necessarily that, because that's not something I would expect at this time, because I don't
Yeah.
think my numbers are really that high on Spotify at the moment.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely getting positive feedback after the shows, which is always nice. And I'm getting people following me and
Mm.
coming up and saying they had a good time, and that's what really matters to me, is because like recording and everything is great, but like it can feel tedious at times. And I really love performing and being live and being on stage. And that's something that I really look forward to. So to see people reacting and having a good time and coming out and dancing is like, it's a great thing to see.
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned too, you put out a bunch of singles between like, like 2019, 2020, 2021, and you still got a bunch coming. I noticed too, you did put out an album like back in 2019. Is that something you're like striving for again? Would you see yourself putting out like another album? Is that something you'd wait for like the label to sign you and then you're like debut?
Yeah, I mean that album was very much like me just getting my feet wet, and just kind of
Right.
figuring it out. I'd say much like I did put out an EP back in last year, about a year ago in 2021. I had an EP come out, which was like 5 songs, which really, I was glad I did that, because that felt like a cohesive body of work and it felt like it meant something. But at the moment, I think I'm kind of just doing the singles thing and focusing on that, because like, one, it's a little bit more cost effective, right? When you're just, doing one song at a time, each song gets a moment. You can really make each song kind of shine and have its chance to kind of break through, versus putting it on an EP or an album where it might get lost because no one will hear it because it's on, it's like track 7 or whatever.
Right.
And I just think that's kind of I think that's what every artist at my level is kind of doing right now. We're just kind of dropping singles and waiting for the one to really take us over the top. And then, once the label's involved, that's when you go into album mode and you put out a project. So
Right. Because you have like more of the backing, you have more resources, you have marketing teams, things like
yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, you have to look at it from a business perspective as well. It's like, it costs money to produce music and put music out. So it's like, why would you not push every single song you have out as a single, when you're at this level?
Right. Right. Yeah, totally. What are some of the struggles that you've had though? Because like you're obviously like a one-man guy in the sense where like you're an independent artist, like you're working on like a come up. Like what are some things that you've run into that have been like challenging for you?
Um, I think I think really just getting exposure. I think
Mm.
that's it's the easiest thing and the hardest thing in this day and age, because like you've got TikTok, you've got Instagram, and people make it seem like it's easy because every day you get on there and you see somebody else who's like quote blowing up or whatever.
Yeah.
And that the algorithm, which that's like another word I hate hearing about, is algorithm, because no one understands how it works. And I don't
Yeah.
even think TikTok doesn't even understand it. But I just think, yeah, finding your audience and finding like the right ways to promote your music, and it's the constant pressure, honestly, to post online and to come up with clever stuff to post on TikTok, and like trying to be like funny and cool, and like it's I was just telling one of my friends, like, that is the shittiest part to me right now of being an artist coming up in the industry. Even a major artist who's already successful, like, they have to do it too. They got to get in front of their phone and like talk to their phone, and like, even like 5 years ago, it didn't used to be that way.
Yeah.
And I think, I think people are talking about it, but I don't think enough people are talking about like how kind of like unrealistic it is to expect all this from artists, and like it almost makes it like cheapen the industry in a way, to me. Like, because if I had it my way, I would just focus on writing really great songs and putting out great music, and not having to spend mental energy being like, what should I post on TikTok today? Like, that's the kind of stuff that really bugs me. So that's probably one of my biggest struggles, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I like that aspect too. And as you were saying that with like how we get wrapped up in the media and whatnot, it like the word that I kept thinking of is like it dehumanizes it, ironically, like you're putting a name, you're putting a face on stuff, but there are, people didn't know who The Weeknd was, like, really, until probably like 4 years ago, maybe, because he was one of those people that like didn't show his face and do a lot of interviews. Like, he wanted his music to really speak for himself. And like, I think that's kind of like the gag you're trying to get to, it seems like, just letting the music really speak for itself.
Yeah. I have no interest in being like a social media influencer. I have no interest in that. I just want people to like my music and like it because they like it, not like it because they think I'm like cute or funny on TikTok, And I think, exactly what you said about like The Weeknd. Like, you'd never catch him on TikTok doing a trend, because it's like, it's not what we signed up to do. But unfortunately, the way the industry has decided it works these days, is that is important, because every label and executive I talk to is like, oh, like, yeah, like the music sounds good, but like, what are you doing on TikTok? Like, what are your numbers like on TikTok? So that's just, unfortunately, I think it's just a reality that everybody kind of has to deal with and navigate these days. But yeah, I think, and like you said before too, like it was just like, it was cooler to almost not know as much, about an artist, or not know as much about like these people who were stars, because that kind of like just, it fed into their persona and the mystery around them and the music. And now it's like, you could go on TikTok and you could see Doja Cat like blowing her nose, like, and it's just like, oh, all right, like it's, I guess, she's a person just like us, but like, does that kind of ruin it for you in a way? Like, I don't know, something to think about.
I mean, it makes me laugh. I'm not gonna don't get me wrong. I think Doja Cat's hilarious on TikTok, but yeah,
Sure,
I see what you mean.
I do too. I think she's funny, but also it's like, would I be more into her and her music if I knew less about her, and I knew less about her, like, quote unquote personality in her day-to-day life?
Right.
Just food for thought.
Yeah, totally. Well, Vince, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you coming on and talking about, all the stuff you got going on. Before I let you go, before we wrap this up, why don't you let people know like where they can find you, where they can, I'm not going to say it, but, follow you on some platforms that we may or may not have bashed slightly.
I mean, look, I bash it, but it's only because like I'm a little bit jaded, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to be on there. That doesn't mean I'm not going to be on there pushing my stuff. So you can follow me at Vince Palmeri on TikTok, Vince Palmeri Music on Instagram, Twitter. It's all there. It's just Vince Palmeri on Spotify, Apple Music. I've got videos on YouTube you could check out. And yeah, thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate it.